Hey everyone, sorry about that. Live stream didn't work, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just do this in a traditional video. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. So this is going to be another video about SCSS and how you can use it. There are some questions about the differences between functions and mixins, so I'm going to kind of show you real quick. So here I have SCSS enabled by hitting this cog, and then I click in and I say SCSS and save and close. So when I'm watching this, what I would do is I'd go ahead and just kind of take a step back and just sort of relax and watch what's happening. I wouldn't try to follow along at the same time. Might go over things a little bit too quickly. So for what I'm going to do is first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple divs. So I'm going to create a box div, and I'm going to create a box for lack of a better one, a box 2, and then a square div. Okay, so what I'm going to first do is I'm going to start off by creating some boxes. So I'm going to do background color red on this one with a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. And we should see that on our screen. Okay, so last time showed you a little bit about SCSS and this thing called Mixins. So Mixins allows us to create recyclable code. And the way you do this is you use the @ sign and you say Mixin. And I'm going to call this Mixin box Mixin. And then in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. So what this allows me to do is here I have two boxes I'm going to create. And I have different color, red and blue. Now my blue box doesn't show up yet. So what this allows me to do is rather than typing out width 100 pixels and then height 100 pixels, what I can do is I can include a mixin. So the mixin, the way you include it is you say include
can I use that
box mixin.
Yeah. Is it okay if I move your laptop? I'll just move it to the side or move it on the bed.
And then I use another one called include box mixin. So here you'll see that I have this box and box 2 mixin. And what I can do is if I want to change the size of both of these boxes, what I can do is I can change them with 2 lines of code like this. So you'll notice rather than having to go into my code 4 times and change all the widths and the heights, I can have it automatically change for me. Now, an even cooler thing with mixins is you can set in variables. So I can say a variable of size, and you can set a default variable by doing colon the default size you want. So in here, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to say size and size, and you'll notice that nothing changes. So what this is doing now is this mixin is taking in the size and it's placing size 100 here and a size 100 here, so nothing changes. Now if I wanted to change the size, let's say to 50, rather than changing 2 lines of code, I just change one line of code and now it's at 50. If I want to go to 100, change it to 200. Now what's really fun about this is this is a default, and I can actually override that default by doing something like this. So you'll notice that the first one has nothing in it, so that it grabs the default size, which is 200, and it sets it to the width and it sets it to the height, and it includes it here. And then below it sets it here to 50. Now it's injecting all of this information. If I wanted to add a border radius to all of mine, I can say border radius 10 pixels, and it automatically adds my border radius to both of them. Now again, Mixins, what they do is it includes a block, it injects a block of CSS into it. And what I mean by that is you have the property, the CSS property, and the CSS value. Now let's say we want to use and create a function. Now a function just returns a value, and what I mean by that is a value for your property, and I'll show you more specifically. So the way you start a function in SCSS is you type the @ and then function, and then you name your function. So let's say I'm going to say this function is called pixel double pixel. And in my function, kind of like JavaScript, it's going to take something, a value or a variable, a parameter, and it's going to be pixel. And what I can do is I can return it, and I'm going to double whatever I take. So I'm going to say pixel times, pixel times 2. So for whatever reason, I want to double my pixels to twice as large. And so what this function is doing is I'm going to enter in a pixel, let's say 4 times 2, it returns 8. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and say down below, I'm going to make this box a bit bigger. Let's say on both of these I want to have a border radius of 10 pixels. And I'm doing this so we can see the difference between the two. And I'm going to say border radius 10 pixels. Now, I want to double, for whatever reason, this border radius. Now I can normally just go like this, which in this case isn't hard to do, but let's say I had a crazy equation and I wanted to double it. Well, what I can do is I can say double pixel, because I just created a function, and then I put in the value. So you'll notice this one is set to 10 pixels. The curvature on that one is way different than the curvature on this one right here. So again, what that's doing is coming up to the function, double pixel, it's injecting 10 times 2, it returns that here. Now you'll notice the biggest difference between these two is for the mixin, you use this @include and you type in the mixin times 100. And right, so this is my default, I'm going to put that in. So this is the name of the mixin. Where the function, you have to include the CSS property. So I have border radius as my CSS property, and then I'm doubling my pixel right here, and it's returning a value. To kind of make this even clearer and add even more functionality is you can, let's create something, a function where we can add multiple numbers together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function, and I'm going to call it sum. And in here, I'm going to take numbers, and you'll notice that I'm using this ellipsis at the end. So what this is going to allow me to do is this going to allow me to create a comma and add multiple numbers together. So essentially put in an array or a list of numbers. And what this function is going to do is it's going to add all those numbers up together, and it's going to return the final number to me. So for example, if I wanted to add 10 plus 20 plus 30, which equals 60, it's going to add all those numbers up together and then return me the value of 60. So to do that, I first created my function, I named it sum. I'm going to create or take in numbers, multiple, a list or an array of numbers. And then I'm going to do something with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first, I know I'm going to return something. And what I'm going to return is I'm going to return the sum. I'm going to return the sum of all of my numbers. Now, when I first start this function, I want to make sure that my sum is equal to 0 pixels. So it's going to start off at 0, and then it's going to add every time and return that to me. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to use some logic, a loop. So like JavaScript, where you can use a for each loop or a while loop, I'm going to use a loop here, and I'm going to say each, for each number in numbers, and actually I'm going to change this to numbers up here because I'm giving in a list of numbers. For each number in numbers, I'm going to then do something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say sum, which is 0 starting off, now equals number plus sum. So it's going to take 0. If for better to make this clearer, I'll start like this. So let's say I add in two numbers, 10 and 20. First, number 10 is going to come in here and say 10. So 0 plus 10 equals 10. Then it's going to loop through again, and it's going to say, what's the next number? The number is 20. So sum, which is an old one, 10 plus the new number 20 equals 30, and it's going to return that. So to show this, that it works, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a new CSS class for the square that I have up here, this div. I'm going to say width 100 pixels, height 100 pixels, and background green. There you go. So let's say I wanted to add multiple numbers together. I can say sum So you'll notice on my screen as I'm doing this, so I have my sum, I'm going to say width of 100 plus 40 pixels plus 10 pixels plus 5 pixels. I can keep going as much as I want, and it's just going to continually add all of those pixels together. And again, you'll notice that this is a function, so the function is returning a value rather than the property and the value. So I hope that this helps you a little bit, and it starts to show you that you can get really complicated with your SCSS, so you can start creating lots of logic and functionality in your SCSS. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me a Slack message, ask questions in comments, and I hope that you enjoyed this video.